in transportation systems architecture update as well. So Peter, can we request you?
Good morning, TAC members. Okay, our regular bi-monthly TIP project statuses. So according to our page 16 of the WAMPO TIP policy requires that we have bi-monthly progress reports for projects programmed to receive WAMPO suballocated funding in the current federal fiscal year, or if they've received it in a past federal fiscal year but have not yet finished. So as is the custom, I'll go through the ones that are set to obligate this year. So we have the 53rd Street Oliver to Woodlawn multi-use path, anticipated to let May of 2025. The Douglas Seneca to Meridian project, anticipated to let August of 2025. The 17th Street North I-135 to Hillside project, anticipated to let in June. We have the Southwest or the Seneca Street multi-use path project, anticipated to let in September. The Southwest Butler Road improvement project ran into some issues with right-of-way, currently working on that. So TPD on the anticipated let date. The Wichita Intelligent Transportation System, East 21st Street North, anticipated to let in early fall of 2025. And the Redbud multi-use path, anticipated to let in September of 2025. And this is also available in the packet on page 9. We have our map, and this is on page 10, along with our table of non-suballocated federal funds and the TIP that have been put in since amendment number 4. Went through that pretty quick. Any questions on the bi-monthly TIP updates? And then next on our docket, we have the Regional Intelligent Transportation Systems Architecture Update. Just want to keep this on people's radar. So background, the purpose of developing an ITS architecture is to document ITS infrastructure, devices, personnel, maintainers, so that planning and deployment can take place in an organized and coordinated fashion. We started on this project back in 2006, or sorry, we started work on a full update this past fall. The last full update was done in 2006. And so it's stated the development maintenance of a regional ITS architecture is federally required. So our progress, we had our ITS stakeholder meeting held on April 22nd, 2025. We had a draft ITS architecture plan and ITS deployment plan. Those were submitted for feedback and review. Our next steps are to incorporate those comments into draft ITS architecture documents, present final draft deliverables to the ITS steering committee at their last scheduled meeting on May 13th, and submit final documents for federal review. And then assuming federal review goes well, we'll come back to TAC and TPB for final approval of the document. Okay. Any questions on ITS architecture?
Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate it. Marky has a couple of items to report to you as well. Thank you, Marky.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Okay, the first thing is the Regional Connections presentation series. So WAMPO is inviting jurisdictions to present on local programs, policies, and projects of regional significance at regularly scheduled TPB meetings or transportation policy body meetings. The goals of this are to facilitate information exchange, enhance regional understanding, and encourage collaboration. These presentations were looking at roughly 15 minutes and subdivided into the categories of growth patterns that can include population, housing, employment, really anything that is notable, planned transportation improvement projects, regional ties between growth patterns and transportation improvements, and then any other topic of regional significance. And those presentations will be documented. You'll see in the staff report, we'll show that, and then anything from that presentation will be linked in future staff reports as well. And so please reach out to me if you'd like to schedule a time to present or you know someone who might be interested. Any questions?
Thank you, Marky. As you all know, we do this every 5 years, and you did present 5 years ago. You did make this presentation. We want to monitor how those changes are taking place every 5 years, and then let our TPB members know what's happening in our region as well. So thanks, Marky. And next item on, we printed some corridor. There's an 11 by 17, printed next to you on the table that has K254 corridor improvements on each of the interchanges that planned. So Marky, go ahead.
Yes, I don't have a lot to add. I definitely do not have the technical expertise to share a lot about this, but we just wanted to announce that the K254 corridor management plan is now complete. As Chad mentioned, we do have some printouts on the tables, and the full plan is available on the KDOT website. That link is available in the packet. And we'll include that in the minutes as well. And this plan proactively identified K254 between El Dorado and Wichita as an area with significant growth. And then it forecasts future needs and recommendations.
Thanks, Mark. It looks like this, 11 by 17 is with you on your page, and you can have it. Thank you so much, Marky. And Mr. Chair, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, public comment. Anybody like to? Going. All right. Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. Kim, Pete?
Good morning. Kim Negrete, Multimodal Safety Transportation Planner, here today to talk about the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan amendment. As you are probably aware, our Transportation Safety Technical Advisors met twice at the beginning of this year, in February 25th and April 17th, to discuss needed updates to the CSAP plan and then to finalize those proposed changes for your consideration today. There were 3 primary updates that are recommended to ensure that our CSAP meets the SS4A grant eligibility requirements and is just more comprehensive in nature. So those 3 primary areas where there were updates is the annual targets for eventually reaching 0 traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries. We also have some updates to the strategies in the implementation plan. And then the biggest update, I would say, to the plan is the list of safety projects submitted by WAMPO member jurisdictions. Each project in an SS4A implementation grant application must include elements of at least one project from the WAMPO CSAP. So we wanted to have that project list embedded in the CSAP. And we received a lot of great projects from the jurisdictions. I think over 80 projects were submitted, safety projects. So it's very exciting to see the prioritization you guys are doing, of course, with your safety improvements. So for today, we have some action options for you. The first is recommend the TPB approve the proposed amendment to the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan as presented. Recommend the TPB not approve the proposed amendment to the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. Recommend the TPB approve the proposed amendment to the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan with specific changes. And the TSTA recommendation is to recommend the TPB approve the proposed amendments to the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan as presented. And I will back up and say that in the MTP 2050, the large spiral bound draft MTP document on your table, there is a green flag, and that is the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. So in the large MTP, yes, I think it's the green one. So if you want to look at those changes, they are included in there. And they are also in a draft that is online as well if you go to wampo.org/safety for our online attendees. So those are our recommended action options for you today.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, staff? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Would make a motion to recommend approval of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan to the TPB.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you. And jumping on Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050. Nick, Pete, Markey, who wants to roll?
Hello. Today, we're going to finally present for one last time on draft Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050 and ask you to make a recommendation to the TPB on final approval on this massive 5-year cycle plan. We completed the 30-day public comment period on April 7th. And as noted before, all chapters have been online posted, and you have copies of it around the table there in 2 volumes. The last appendix is in its own separate volume, and it does include edits made after the comment period. So the last edits and comments should be reflected in there, including a tab in there for the public comments as well. I believe that would be the yellow tab. So on May 13th, the TPB will make its final vote based on your recommendation today. And after that, the only thing remaining will be the final public comment, the final public engagement phase. It will just be a road show introducing the approved plan to the region. Of course, once again, these are just how the chapters appear on the website, wampo.org/MDP 2050. And today, we are going to go again through the 7 main chapters of the document. Just for one last refresher for anyone who missed the previous presentations on this information, though I'm sure many of you have already been immersed in it. And once we've gone through that, we will come back and ask you for your vote on a recommendation. The Chapter 1, Plan, Purpose, and Development. Chapter 2, Regional Trends. Chapter 4, System Management. Chapter 5, System Performance Report. This is where you will find information on performance measures, including the required federal performance measures and non-federally required regional performance measures developed for the WAMPO region. This will be things that can be, concrete measures that can be tracked over time for progress towards various goals. Chapter 6, the financial plan. This is just where we prove that the plan is fiscally constrained, i.e. does not project that there will be more spending than the amount of revenue that is anticipated. Finally, Chapter 7, project selection and list, where you will find the project list of projects that are necessarily consistent with the MTP and therefore may qualify for funding on that basis in the future, including category projects, which we'll get into. And the appendices, these 14 appendices, which we will not get into in detail today: plan development, project involvement and engagement summary, MDP amendment procedures, project scoring model, cost estimation model, travel demand model forecasts, congestion management process, regional ITS architecture, comprehensive safety action plan, which is the exact thing on which you just voted a moment ago. Regional transit implementation plan, active transportation plan, electric vehicle network plan, commuter flows, and economic development analysis. Because that appendix is huge, it is in a separate volume around the table, that skinnier one. Chapter 1, plan, purpose, and development. This is a basic introductory chapter. It explains the federal regulations governing MPOs and the development of metropolitan transportation plans, which has to happen every 5 years, and explains some of the reasons behind that. Revised introduction to the WAMPO region and to WAMPO as an organization. It summarizes the planning process that has been followed in the development of this plan, including the development of a vision and goals for the MTP, the identification of needs and baseline conditions through data analysis and public engagement, and finally, the development of a fiscally constrained project list. It lists related documents and WAMPO committees. It summarizes briefly public engagement activities that have been done, though much more information on that can be found in Appendix B. And finally, it introduces the vision and goals of MTP 2050 and how they align with the U.S. Department of Transportation's federal planning factors, which are required to be consistent with the plan. The vision of MTP 2050 is to enhance connectivity in a way that supports equitable development of a safe, reliable, multimodal transportation network that enriches the quality of place within the WAMPO region. This vision is served by the goals of making things safe and reliable, equitable and accessible, connected and multimodal, and engaging in environmental and financial stewardship. Peter? Now Peter will present on chapters 2 through 5.
Thank you, TAC members. I will try to be brief and concise as we go through these different chapters. So going through chapter 2, our regional trends looks at the regional economic sectors, residential expansion, transportation networks, and impacts on environment and equity. So chapter 2.1 and 2.2 summarize broad growth trends in employment and population throughout the region and looks at the region's current and past demographics. For example, you can see the regional population pyramid describing our different age and demographic groups. 2.3 and 2.4, education and housing, looks at the distribution of schools and the scale of the regional education system, and looks at past and present household and housing characteristics. For example, you can find a median home value by census tract map within that chapter. Looking at employment and jobs and travel, summarize current and projected regional employment, highlights trends across various industry sectors. 2.6 looks at regional commuting patterns and travel mode shares, including transit ridership. You can see here we have our example of the Wichita transit demand response trips and origins and destinations map. 2.7 and 2.8 look at environmental resources and environmental justice. Chapter 3 are existing conditions. So looks at existing transportation infrastructure and services in the WAMPO region. So 3.1 and 3.2 looks at bridges, roads, transit, paratransit. So looks at the current network of roads and bridges, summarizes the current availability of public transit services and the use thereof in the region. And you can see our annual average daily traffic on the national highway system in this map here from 3.1. 3.3 looks at our bicycle and pedestrian network. And you can see here our example of our bicycle and pedestrian count projections based on our annual fall counts. Freight examines the existing freight facilities, the weight and value of commodities moving through the region, and the movement of goods by various transportation modes, including highways, rails, and air transport. You can see our example of our primary highway freight network throughout the region, quite similar to the national highway system. And then 3.5 looks at our electric vehicle plan that we went through at the, I think we started in 2023 and ended in 2024, looks at an overview of current electric vehicle charging infrastructure and potential future deployments and opportunities for funding. Chapter 4, system management, looks at issues and opportunities related to how the transportation network is maintained and managed. So 4.1 gives a brief overview of infrastructure condition, e.g. bridge condition. You can see example there of the number of bridges, the amount of total bridge area, deck area that we have, and its different condition as judged by the National Bridge Inventory. And then it also looks at some potential funding programs for maintenance. So you have the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, the Kansas Local Bridge Improvement Program, and then, for example, the FTA 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Grants for public transit vehicles and other facilities. Intelligent Transportation Systems, 4.3, summary of regional ITS infrastructure in the region. You can see here, this is just a map of all of the different ITS cameras on the which-way network within WAMPO. And then 4.4 looks at transportation safety, overview of the safe system approach, summary of regional safety action plan, relevant statistics, and of course, those identified safety emphasis areas, intersection, speed, and vulnerable road users. And then I would also see Appendix I, the CSAT plan. 4.5 and 4.6, transportation demand management and congestion management. So 4.5, transportation demand management, not confused with travel demand model, TDM. They have the same acronym. So provides an overview of a set of general strategies designed to optimize transportation efficiency, improve travel options, and promote sustainable mobility without expanding roadway capacity. And then it showcases some forecasts from the WAMPO travel demand model. And you can see more on those in Appendix F. And then our congestion management discusses congestion management and WAMPO's federally required CMP or congestion management plan, which is also another appendix in the MTP, Appendix G. And then finally, security and system resilience describes ways to improve transportation system resilience to natural disasters and climate change, and looks at the MPO's role in assessing infrastructure vulnerability and coordinating with local planning agencies and emergency planning in the region. Chapter 5, System Performance Report. So 5.1 looks at the federal required performance measures, and it looks at the performance measures for the WAMPO region, including PM1 safety, PM2 pavement and bridge condition, and PM3 system performance, and then also transit asset management, or TAM, and then also showcases the statewide performance measure targets WAMPO supported in 2024, which were the most current at the time of MTP 2050 development. And you can see example here. Here are the 5-year rolling average safety measures for the WAMPO region. There's an expanded chart within the chapter. And then 5.2 looks at regional performance measures. So it explores several performance measures beyond those that are just federally required. So we have commuter mode shares, average travel time to work, greenhouse gas emissions, or GHG, and a sidewalk multi-use path network length, or just how much sidewalk do we have in the region. Going through there, and then getting to chapter 6. Sorry, went through that pretty fast. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Chapter 6, the financial plan. As I mentioned before, the point of this chapter is to demonstrate that the plan is fiscally constrained, meaning that the costs of the projects in the fiscally constrained project list, plus the cost of operation and maintenance of the transportation system, we have a question on the part that just happened.
Be happy to answer that. Good question. That is work from home and is probably the most interesting out of those. We have the graph set up to be 100%, so it still looks small, but from 2019, we had 3.3% of people working at home. And then in 2020, when we of course had significant changes in how people go to work, the census wasn't able to get enough data or reliable data to put together for that year, but you can see when they were able to put their statistics together in 2021, it had gone up to 9%, over double of what it had been in the previous, and has slowly come back down to 7% in 2023, the most recent year of available data. Good question. Thank you, David Schwartz.
The financial plan chapter shows that projected costs of projects in the fiscally constrained list, plus the cost to operate and maintain the transportation system do not exceed projected revenues over the same planning horizon out to the year 2050. We calculated this at the levels of KDOT projects, public transit, and local government other than public transit. This was done in order to make sure that these were treated separately because they have different sources of funding, different rules, and different projects and different facilities they're responsible for. And then also we did it for 3 time bands of 25 to 28, 29 to 38, and 39 to 50. Unless otherwise noted, we used a default assumption of a 1% per year increase in annual revenues and a 4.5% annual increase in operation and maintenance costs using the default inflation factor used by KDOT for that one. There's no distinction between WAMPO suballocated federal funding and non-suballocated federal funding for the purposes of this analysis. There's a quick breakdown of the projects by project type in here of our 9 project categories that we used for project scoring, 147 projects total. You find this on page 170 of the MTP in chapter 6. And then also by KDOT, public transit, and local government, 147 total with 71 in the first time band, 66 in the second time band, and 10 in the last time band. And here on page 171 of the MTP, you'll find the final fiscal constraint analysis table split up by KDOT, public transit, and local government other than public transit, coming to a final balance that is not negative. So that's good. And now going on to chapter 7, the project selection process that got us the projects that went into the projects that were in that fiscal constraint analysis. From September 15th, 2023 to February 2nd, 2024, we had a combined call for projects for MTP 2050 and for the 2025 to 2028 PIP for the region. WAMPO staff and consultants scored the projects and reflected them in the travel demand model. And the PSC made recommendations on projects to appear in the TIP, which were approved by the TPB to be in the new TIP on August 13th, 2024. And then on October 3rd last year, the PSC met and made recommendations for the fiscally constrained project list for the MTP, which the TAC recommended to the TPB on October 28, and then on November 12th, the TPB approved the project list for MTP 2050, and that is part of what is being voted on today. Except that now it is for the entire plan, not just the project list. As I said, we had the 3 time bands of 25 to 28. That first one is to match the TIP period. Then 29 to 38, just to cover 10 years past that. And finally, just a 12-year time band to cover the rest of it. Again, by KDOT, public transit, and local government other than public transit. We chose to not have an illustrative list for this MTP, although one could be added through a future amendment to the MTP if need be. We did not have an illustrative list because we were in the fiscal constraint analysis. There was room for all of the projects that were submitted during the call for projects to get into the fiscally constrained list. And therefore, it was not necessary to put any into the illustrative list, which would be beyond that. It would need to be moved up to a fiscally constrained list in order to proceed in the future. In addition to specific projects that were submitted during the call for projects, the fiscally constrained project list also contains what we call category projects. Projects where it is a category where any project that fits into that category may qualify for future funding because it is consistent with the MTP on that basis. The reasoning for doing this is there are some projects of such a nature that from their inception to actually doing them, not much time passes, and therefore it is hard to get them into these long-range plans. That's why we created category projects for public transit, for bridge projects, for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, for traffic flow and safety improvements, and for intelligent transportation system projects. Projects may also qualify to get into the TIP at a later date by being consistent with the vision and goals of an MTP, which were mentioned earlier. It's just a quick map of project locations among the projects that are mappable by time band and by project type. You can find these on pages 178 and 177 respectively in the MTP. Here are the KDOT sponsored projects. As you can see, most of them are in the first time band. This is on page 179, excuse me. Also on page 179, you will find our public transit projects, all of which are category projects at this time, divided between the 3 time bands. And starting on page 181, you can find the other local government projects in the fiscally constrained project list, starting with the 25 to 28 time band with 63 projects, 5 of which are category projects. The next time band starts on page 182. Again, it's 63 projects, 5 of which are category projects. And the final time band, 39 to 50, is on page 183. It contains 8 projects only, 5 of which are the category projects. All the submitted projects are in time bands. And now I'll turn things over to Marky Jonas to discuss our final round of public engagement.
Thank you, Nick. As Nick mentioned earlier, we did hold our 30-day public comment period from March 8 to April 7. We did multiple things during this time, including presenting at partner events, and we also held our own 2 events. We held a virtual public meeting on March 12th, as well as an open house on March 26th. Thank you to all who attended and engaged with us during that period. And we received 40 public comments. Those are all documented in the draft plan as well as staff response. Those are in the plan. There's a link to them in the packet. And then they are, I believe, on that first sticky note tab in that full plan printout. Okay, and then before I present your action options, are there any questions for me or anyone else on staff? Okay, for Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050 or MTP 2050, the action options are to recommend the TBB approve Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050 as presented, recommend the TBB not approve Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050, or recommend the TBB approve Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050 with specific changes. WAMPO staff recommend approving. Our recommendation is that you recommend the TBB approve Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050 as presented.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions, comments? Motion?
I want to say, good job to WAMPO staff. This is always a huge undertaking. We do it seems like every 5 years, I think we do it, and it takes about 2.5, 3 years to get through. So good job. Glad to see it get to the finish line. And if I got the motion right, I would recommend that we recommend that they recommend approval.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to approve as presented and recommend approval to the Transportation Policy Board. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. And like Dan said, thank you to all the staff and everybody that's worked on this. Great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next one, C, supporting Wichita Transit 2025's performance targets, measurement targets.
Good morning all again. So one too far. So 2025 transit safety target. So under the FTA's Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, or PTSAP rule, applicable transit agencies are required to develop safety plans that define how those agencies will implement safety management systems. So these plans are required to include targets for performance measures defined in the National Public Transportation Safety Plan, which relate to fatalities, injuries, safety events, and system reliability. And so Wichita Transit has developed safety targets. You can see them up here. The acronym there is Vehicle Revenue Miles, and they adopt a new set of targets each year. So supporting these performance measure targets. So in coordination with transit agencies and state governments, MPOs are federally required to set or adopt performance measure targets for transit safety performance measures for their regions. This occurs in varying amounts of coordination with the different local transit agencies. Some MPOs are coupled almost within their transit agency. Some are more like WAMPO, where we have Wichita Transit as the primary regional transit provider, and they very much work independently. But in either case, we are all nationally required to either support or come up with our own transit targets once our local transit or FTA designated transit recipient develops safety targets. So we received these targets from Wichita Transit on April 1st, 2025. Our deadline to set our own or adopt these targets is October of 2025, or will be in October 2025, 180 days after receiving them. So in collaboration with Wichita Transit, WAMPO staff recommend supporting the Wichita Transit safety targets for the WAMPO region. Before I read the action options, any questions for me? So our options are, we can recommend the TPB approve supporting Wichita Transit's 2025 transit safety targets for the WAMPO regions as presented, not approve supporting them, approve supporting them with specific changes. We recommend that the TPB approve supporting Wichita Transit safety measure targets for WAMPO as presented.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Motion? Move to approve as presented and
Second.
Lynn, motion second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Appreciate it. Discussion items. Might as well keep rolling.
Okay, Our Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A update. So SS4A grants are awarded on a competitive basis to support planning, infrastructure, and behavioral and operational initiatives to prevent fatalities and serious injuries among all road users. The FFY 2025 SS4A Notice of Funding Opportunity was released on March 28, 2025, and the grant applications, including for implementation grants, must be submitted by 5 p.m. on June 26, 2025. So following a thorough review of the SS4A Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, in discussion with jurisdictions, applications submitted by individual jurisdictions appear to offer greater advantages than a single MPO-wide submission, which we had initially considered doing. So if each jurisdiction submits on their own, multiple projects in the region could be submitted and judged independently. Each project would get its own dedicated narrative of up to 12 pages. Most successful applications focus on one project, one corridor, or sometimes similar improvements dispersed throughout an entire jurisdiction. The merits of a project would be evaluated in a local context, allowing for stronger narrative development. It would allow for projects from smaller communities to be considered significant instead of competing for inclusion in a WAMPO application. And also communities with populations under 50,000 and rural communities receive bonus points during application scoring. And then finally, the successful applicants would directly manage their awarded grant with no extra agreements, administration, or reimbursement issues. And just to hit on this last bullet point, looking forward into the future, if one of our jurisdictions were to be successful, if an MPO were to submit on their behalf, we would be in the position of managing all of those reimbursement funds and managing some of the technical aspects that are normally done between a jurisdiction and Bureau of Local Projects. Now, this doesn't represent an absolute barrier to WAMPO submitting one, but does risk some unknowns because typically WAMPO staff, we have not worked with development of large infrastructure projects and with KDOT on ensuring the consistent flow of federal funds during a project. And so as a potential risk in the future, in case SS4A grant were to be awarded, it's something that's very important and does add some more risk if WAMPO were to submit on behalf of the whole region.
But you as staff of WAMPO are ready to assist those entities that would be willing to or want to apply, so we could give them data, help them prepare those grants and help with the grant applications. But it would be better if the jurisdiction did it because, I mean, we're going to be ultimately responsible for it. And we don't really have the money at WAMPO to back, because isn't it, we submit for reimbursement. So we don't have that kind of cash to do that from WAMPO.
Yes, all things will be submitted for reimbursement afterwards. So thank you, Chair Wajak. And to continue, we're, with this all in mind, we're encouraging member jurisdictions to consider submitting their own individual grant application. And each submitted project, as Kim said earlier, must include elements of at least one project from the WAMPO CSTAB. So we don't want to leave you on your own on here. So WAMPO staff, in collaboration with the Kansas Infrastructure Hub, we are making ourselves available to assist those who want to, for identifying projects, developing grant application narratives, assembling the data, and providing letters of support. One more item, if the case did happen where we don't have any individual jurisdictions wishing to or pursuing their own interest to submit, we'll consider submitting our own in that particular case. Before moving on, any questions on that? Oh, sorry. And then I always forget the name of this program, Kim. It's the Kansas Build Funding. They are offering a match for certain safety projects or safety projects. This includes up to a 15% match. In addition, because typically with all these federal grant applications, it's an 80-20 split. KDOT is making these kind of grant projects eligible for that additional 15% of that could cover some of that local costs.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to support Peter's points that he made. One of the things staff did was to compile what are those successful projects that were submitted in the past and what were the projects that were won. And, staff shared those with technical advisory members as well. And one of the things staff learned was like, if communities and there were letters of support, or letters of concerns of safety, or some of the events that occurred, all those documentation would, demonstrate the need and proof of why that project is important. So there's a context that is so much that is known to jurisdictions that WAMPO staff may not be knowledgeable of that. So that's another reason why, having jurisdiction sending the application would compile all the context and the support letters and the chronological events, how that happened, why that safety project is important, how the data on crashes or any of those would be helpful to the application. So just to support what Peter has put together. Thank you.
James.
So I had a question. It says that the submissions are due June 26, 2025. What kind of a time frame is the evaluation and award done within?
Kim, if you know the date specifically.
So that is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just FYI on that grant application. They inform the awards by the end of the year, and then you have 5 years to complete those projects. So there is a 5-year time span once you receive that award notice before you actually have to complete the project. So they'll let you know typically by December. Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Well, like I said, we stand ready to help any jurisdiction that's willing or wanting to do this. So go from there. All right. Next, employment sector IT system.
So hopefully this slide is familiar now that we've gone through. This will be the 6th one. So as part of our process with MTP, we did our economic development study, and you can see the other smaller, skinnier binder that has all this information in it. Just going through these sectors one by one. The next one here we were going to go through is the IT systems and support. So the IT system support as defined by the Greater Wichita Partnership not only includes IT services like cybersecurity and software, like software development, but also support services such as payroll, accounting, and all sorts of administrative logistics, including food service providers like think of places like Cisco, any kind of business support enterprise. So we're going to look at 3 things. Who are the key players today in WAMPO? Where is the industry as a whole right now? What key factors will affect the future of the industry? So there's approximately 300 establishments supporting about 8,500 regional jobs as of the time of these reports, which is now approaching 4 years, this is in 2021. So going through here, our 5 largest IT systems and support employers by employment location would be, number 1 would be InfoSeek Services at about 500. Cox Communications has a location with 175 people at it. They likely employ many more people in the region than that, but that was their largest single location. We have the T-Mobile call center, and then High Touch Technologies, 150, and then Sodexo, which I hope I'm pronouncing that one correct, at 130. They're another one of the business and food providers for different businesses. And so going through here, the Wichita MSA IT system employment comparison. So you can see that between a lot of our other neighbors here, we don't have the largest IT systems and support selection. We're sitting at about, again, 8,500 as in 2021. Some of your larger ones, KC has over 46,000. And our employment, though it has varied a bit, peaking at just over 9,000 in 2020, has kind of cooled off at 8,500, but has been relatively stable since 2015. And then looking at our median wage comparison, middle in the pack to maybe a little bit lower at 66,700 about, or 800 in 2021. You can see a little bit higher than St. Louis Mo, Kansas City, Missouri, a little bit well, quite a bit lower than some of our other regional partners here. And then looking at the ITS systems and support the MSA wage trend. So it has been steadily rising from 2015 to 2021. But again, I always like to include the inflation adjusted. So looking back, this just shows the if $66,856 was your wage, 58,721 would be that buying power from 2015. So still going up since 2021, but as you can see, just kind of keeping up with inflation, more or less. And then finally, key factors for the future. Revenue entrance. So entry barriers in this industry are low in terms of regulation and capital, but you require expertise in IT and business support services. These trusted substitutes organizations rely heavily on IT systems, business processing, administrative support, payroll services. And though you can do some of these in-house, oftentimes most businesses are going to outsource them as they're often much more economically tenable that way. There's a high rivalry amongst different firms. It's a highly competitive industry, and there's a lot of companies working in this space. Okay, I went through that pretty fast. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Sure. Any other business that we need to bring up from the members? Staff? Okay, well, thank you. We stand adjourned.